Record. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 44th Annual Atlanta Film Festival and the 10th anniversary of the Atlanta Film Festival's Creative Conference. Today, this panel is about COVID and the crew. So we're talking to crew members who have been on set and some who are in charge of safety on set. We may have another person joining us partially through this call, but I'm very excited about this because Georgia is open. We are open for business. Shows are starting to come back on. I call them, well, we all call them kind of the canary in the coal mine shows that started up early. Things have been going pretty good so far, and we hope that continues. But I really wanted to share this knowledge that we have gained with people around the country who are trying to get back to work, maybe a little scared of it, or just want to know how it is. So with us today, I have Trish Solyn. She started off as a grip and a gaffer, eventually kind of landed in the camera department. She's in the union as an AC. She also is a cinematographer for indie films, indie shorts, and also works as a camera operator. She's done different shows like Iron Chef Gauntlet, The Resident, The Quad, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Sleepy Hollow, The Walking Dead. Then we have Sarah Mays, who has known me since I was a snot-nosed little bratty PA back in the early 90s. She was incredibly generous with me when I was a smart mouth little PA. So I still have a special, anybody who was nice to me back then, I have a special place in my heart for. I was such a little snot. But I worked my way up as well. Sarah started off in the early 90s. She's worked in makeup department. She's now a makeup department head working on things like Zombieland Double Tap, Insatiable, MacGyver, Keeping Up with the Joneses, The Accountant, and a whole host of other things you can see on their IMDb links. And then we have Megan King. Megan comes from Commercial World. She's been in the business for almost 15 years, back in 2006. Started off as a PA, worked her way up to coordinator, then production supervisor. Then she decided to sell out and go work as an agency producer, the enemy of a commercial producer. That's a joke, sorry, agency people. And then she is now working at Turner Broadcasting as their manager of production safety. I think this is kind of a part-time thing. But you know, maybe it'll turn into a full-time thing. But you know, I wanted a little bit of experience. Trish has done some independent and some union stuff. Sarah is back on a union show, and Megan is in broadcast, where a lot of stuff never stopped. So I thought this would be a great conversation. So I want to start with, originally I was going to start with Keith, because I think he was the first one back on set. But I'm guessing that Trisha, now you may have been the first person back on set. So like, what was that first day like? Because I have to imagine like the first day you're back, it's a little scary.
So I came in on a show that was already going, and you know, it's Georgia summer, and it's really, really, really hot and humid, which, you know, normally you're used to, but have been in months and months of air-conditioned homes. And I knew it was going to be tough going back because, you know, we're used to a lot of physical labor, and that keeps us fit. And then gyms were closed for a while. And I actually was sick in February potentially with COVID. So I'm dealing with that, you know, repercussions of that. So that first day back was really hard physically. I got heat exhaustion twice. All the crew was like, we all did this Monday. Don't worry. It's normal. Like, be used to it. But yeah, it was really rough. I was shocked at how weak I had gotten, how difficult, you know, all the safety protocols on top of your general behaviors were. And yeah, like breathing through the mask is not the worst thing in the world, but like there are definitely challenges to it. And it does make you feel like you're not getting as much air, and you certainly are not getting as much water break because you have to go outside, because we were shooting inside for most of our first day and second day. Yeah, and one of the safety protocols is if you're inside, you know, they have air circulating with filtration and whatnot in most sets, but you're supposed to wear the mask 24/7, you know, inside, and step outside anytime you want to remove it or lift it or anything, because otherwise you're exposing everyone to, you know, your germs, which potentially have COVID in them. So the idea you know, especially as a camera person, when you're used to just stealing quick water breaks while they're rolling and doing what, you can't do any of that. You have to actually go outside in order to take any sort of break at all. And so with the rigors of set speed, that becomes.
Yeah. So Megan, you are back at, sorry, Trisha, you froze. So I'm gonna jump. If you need to, oh, she's back. All right. So Megan, I'm gonna go to you next. So how did you end up working at Turner? Because you don't work at Turner Broadcasting. I don't even know if you've done little shows for them at all, but how did that job opportunity come about? And how did you prepare yourself for that?
Well, I have a lot of friends in the business with my 15 years experience, or almost 15 years experience. So how that happened is I decided to take it upon myself to take the COVID-19 compliance officer courses that were offered to go back on set. And then I took a course through Johns Hopkins University for contact tracing. And not only did I take these courses to know how to get back on set, I also took them just for my own personal, you know, lover of learning type of personality I have. So when that happened, I happened to be on LinkedIn and saw somebody needed a manager of production safety. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I know production. I know how it works. I understand it. And I'm a safety person. Being as a production manager, we were concerned about safety even before COVID, you know, safety on the lift gates and things like that. So I felt like this role was a really good spot for me after learning more about what COVID-19 was, how it affected sets, and how we can benefit from just wearing masks, social distancing, washing hands, which seems very elementary, but it is what it is. So I reached out to a friend over at Turner, said, hey, I saw this job posting. Could you get me in touch with a hiring manager? And they said, oh, okay. And then apparently that job went away. It went to Burbank, but their news and sports department was looking for a manager of production safety. So they were like, well, let's see if we can get you into the mix. It happened very quickly. I got in there, had to learn. I didn't have to learn their system, which was really great. I'm learning it now. But all I had to do was kind of get in there and make sure people were wearing masks. They had all the PPE supplies that we have for them, and they are stocked. So it was very easy to keep the PPE up and like, oh, you don't have a mask? Great. Here's one. Like, have a cart, no big deal. I've got a mask for you. You need hand sanitizer? Boom. I got that for you. So that's how I got into this role. And I feel very comfortable being there because we are all wearing masks, and we're all washing our hands, and I'm more socially distanced than some of the crew members in the control rooms and things, but I still feel very safe being there because I am social distance. I am wearing a mask. It does suck, but it's for the health of everything. So yeah, that's how I got into that role. That's how I'm there.
So Sarah, with makeup, you guys are ridiculously cleanly oriented anyway. I mean, for those of you who don't know, the actors have their own little bags. You're not sharing lipstick or brushes or, mascara wand. So for you guys, cleanliness is a big thing anyway. How has the what you do changed from how things were before?
It has changed in the way that I've done the same thing. I've just educated myself as much as humanly possible, certifying myself through Barbicide, through various organizations, and just through quarantine, I've been reading as much as humanly possible, just to stay prepared for if and when the day came. And then in addition to that, watching through Instagram and on Facebook and talking with makeup friends, what is everybody doing? And it's really boiled down to containers and plastic containers, nothing porous. So for example, when you walk into the makeup trailer, and my makeup trailer, which is now, it used to be the hair and makeup trailer, but that's not safety. There's no 6 feet. So makeup is in this massive trailer. We have plexiglass partitions between each chair, which is 6.5 feet apart. We have a door for each makeup artist so that there's no people are not traveling back and forth. Anyway, back to the containment. We've just been going crazy on Amazon, finding these really cool things that sit behind the back bar that open and close and hold all of our brushes. So nothing is ever exposed. Nothing in the trailer is exposed at our stations. The counters are barren. There's nothing on the counters, whereas in the olden days, we used to have all kinds of shit over, but as we know, as droplets come out, they land, and there it is. So the other thing that's been interesting is we've made sure that the actors are aware when their masks do come off. We've asked them to kindly refrain from speaking, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but we're masked and, you know, protected here and here. So, you know, I feel like our team is safe. Everybody's getting tested 3 times a week, at least for the actors and my department, hair department, those of us who are in close contact. But the real trick has just been to have bottles of 70% alcohol everywhere. There's hand sanitizers just everywhere on the set. As many of you know, my executive producer, I don't know if I can say his name or not, is he's just it's just great. So far, it's been great. We're day 4 back into filming. We started in Puerto Rico, and then on the flight home, everybody got the email. We're shut down for 10 days. But here we are, exactly 6 months later, by the way, and up and running. And it's been interesting. People ask me, can you drink coffee on the set? Yeah, and it's just been a learning curve, and it's been great.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is too, no one is allowed in the makeup trailer unless you are pre-approved, unless you're an actor, basically. And a lot of the day players, I will look at them while they're standing outside. Stunts, oftentimes they're easier, and I'll go, here's a little container of sunscreen. Go and put that on for me. Thank you. Bye. And you know, so the least amount of contact with people, the better. Clearly, with first team actors, you know, 1 through 12, that's a different story. So.
Yeah. So, you know, it's funny. I absolutely hate hand sanitizer. The smell of it just makes me ill. It's the chemical smell. So being on set, like, I've always had a problem with hand sanitizer. Like, no, get it away from me. Keep it off set. Do not use it, because I hated this. Like, go wash your hands. I'm kind of glad I'm not taking jobs right now, because like that would be the worst thing, to be surrounded by the smell of constant hand sanitizer. You know, it's got to affect how you interact with actors. I mean, one of the things that I've always loved about the makeup and hair trailer and finding the right team, especially when you're dealing with movies and television and long form stuff, is you really want your hair and makeup people to have that special bond with your characters and with your actors, because you are the last thing they see before they go on set. It's the loving arms of the hair and makeup department and that kind of special bond that you guys get with the actors that is really building them up and making them feel special and making them feel good, and having them look in the mirror and know they look great. And it's like that last step, hair, makeup, and wardrobe are those last steps where they become that character and they walk out of the trailer and they walk on set and hopefully give us some movie magic. And I'm wondering if the kind of disassociation now doesn't, you know, the idea where, hey, it'd be nice if you didn't talk while we're doing this, you know, that doesn't allow now for those kind of bonds to happen as strongly. Am I crazy in thinking that? Like, it feels different.
It is. It really is. I mean, even just being on the set, our first AD walks around. He's like, I mean, there's arrows on the ground to keep people moving. Everyone is supposed to stay 6 feet apart. And man, when it's hard to hear, each other and the ADs, and then 6 feet becomes 4 feet, like on the set. But I guess that is inevitable, just like when the actors have to remove their masks and have a scene and have to make out. And, that's all interesting, but that's happening. The other thing I just wanted to point out that was a big learning curve for me this week was I purchased these mask cases. They're the size of a large cell phone, and they are sanitizable. They are, baby blue, and we have labeled each actor's names on them. So we thought we would put that in their makeup bag, come to set, and of course at last looks, they have to take off their mask. So it seemed that we would be the likely people to take the mask from them and put it in there. So what was happening was actors were taking their masks off and kind of just setting it into our blue case, which would inevitably require us to have to touch the mask. And my team and I were not comfortable with that. So we just changed it up a little bit. We put a little prop table just off the side of the set where we put all those mask cases down, and we labeled it cast masks, makeup department. And that way they can then be wholly responsible for their masks going into their case, and we don't have to touch it. And we, if not, and then when we do initially give that last look and they want to give us their mask, we hand them the case and don't touch, let them put it in all the way, spray our hands, and put it on that table. And they know where to go find it when they move on to the next scene. So that seemed to be a really cool system that is working, but masks are nasty.
Well, and
yeah,
there's
we don't want
mask knee. So people who are wearing them in the hot sun, crew members who've never had acne before are getting acne because it's hot and it's sweaty. You're breathing in. And I was talking to the actor panel, well, not the actor panel, but the audition panel. I said, this is something that you guys probably haven't thought about. Maybe the actors aren't wearing them enough, but it might become a thing for makeup artists that are going to have to deal with that because the actors may end up having issues like that.
Yeah, and they're also getting the lines from the masks on their face, which is an indentation that makeup cannot necessarily cover depending on their facial structure, etc. So what I've ordered, I had production order for me the mask extenders that go along the back, and they're made of silicone, and they just grab the loops of the mask at the back of the neck, and they just give a little bit more breathing room. May not be the safest thing, but everybody's far more comfortable. The DP, I gave him one, the DP, he was just dying. Some people are, and then you can just, and from there you can unloop your ears, and it just your mask just rests right here. So it's always on you. You're not having to take it off and put it in a dirty pocket or put it down. It's just always with you. And then, so anyway, that's been cool. And
hopefully that mask extender keeps it off your chin. Because here's one thing I've been thinking about as I see all these people, especially on TV, not necessarily TV or movies, but just people, is they'll pull the mask down on their neck. Well, guess what? People have been spitting on your neck all friggin' day. And then you're going to take that and put it up on your mouth. Yeah. So that's something I think we haven't been taught. We learn as we go. What is new this week, or what we understand as the science this week, can be different next week. And, you don't think about that. Like, people just push it down. I see it a lot in the protest movement. You know, they push it down and they pull it back up, and I'm thinking, think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's true.
Can I speak on that for a sec? So I'm not a COVID expert on the sets that I've been on, which have been great and have educated me far more than I knew. But one of the things they said is the mask is either on your face or it's clipped to you on a carabiner, because that way you don't have it touching other things. She also recommended that, you consider the outside of the mask the dirty side, and that you want to wrap COVID into itself, and that your mask, touching all your stuff is fine, because if you're sick, whatever. and then just don't touch anything else. But it's really important to make sure that, yeah, you don't drop it below your nose because it's uncomfortable, because it's not doing anyone any good. And if you take it down and you drop it here, again, it's not doing, so take it all the way off or have it all the way on. And I think that was just really good habit for people, and it prevented mistakes, because the thing you'll learn is, like, I work really, really hard to follow the rules because I care about people and things. But I still made mistakes, like, often, sadly. But so it's really important that you set up those same kind of protocols and habitual things that you just do, so you're not even thinking about them, just like you did your old job before, because the changes that you have to make. Sarah Mays talked about distance on set. Like, yes, so I didn't realize, it's like, we're wearing a mask, we can get close. It's like, no, you still have to stay 6 feet apart, and people should be aware of that, whether you're masked or not. They consider if you spend more than 15 minutes with any one person throughout, I think it's like an 8-hour period or something, like, you're considered contagious to the other. And if that person's sick, then you are considered sick. Mm-hmm. So when you're handing off lenses or black wrapping a light and somebody, hands you a flag, and like all that stuff adds up together, dolly grips interchanging with camera, like, sets get loud because you can't stand next to your person and whisper anymore on your walkie far away, or you have to speak at a level where they can hear you through a mask 6 feet away. And poor ADs, like, they're not allowed to have a lot of people on set at any one time anyways, which in itself is difficult enough. But then to have people having to talk without being able to talk as loud as they need to, it becomes a big issue. Because, especially in camera department, we're used to being super quiet, whispering, standing right next to each other, or not talking at all. And luckily we have, hand gestures. I know Grip and Electrics have hand gestures, but not every department has a hand gesture for everything. And so that became a big issue and something to get used to. The other thing is, like, they discussed pods where each department had wristbands to keep, different colors, only one color could be on set at one time. And camera is one of those departments that sadly has to be on set with actors when they're without masks. And so we're considered at the highest risk, and the highest risk to the actors. So one of the things that we had to start considering is, as our COVID expert said, when an actor exhales, that is considered a contagious area. So if the camera's within 6 feet or any, piece of a grip equipment or whatnot, like, that's all contagious now. So we have to clean everything all the time, in between takes, in between pass offs. Like, you can't just take a lens off a camera and give a new lens. Like, if an actor's breathed on it, you have to wipe it down, and all that stuff starts wearing on the gear. The alcohol level is totally wearing through the gear already. The time consumption of that is very, very high, and something not to be. And then, just like I said, like, the crossing of paths, like, you're very contagious. So I always, like, anytime I touched anything, I had hand sanitizer on my belt in a little, like, squeezy bottle. I just squeeze that before I touched anything, before I touched anyone, before I touched myself. Like, if I touched myself, I would do it again. Like, before I rub my eyes, like, just, I know you hate it, and I never used it before either, and think the same thing. It's creating super bugs, but, like, now we have to. And so it's one of those things where it's like, you just have to put your high ideals away and your discomforts away and just do it for the greater good, I think.
Absolutely.
So. Yeah. And even at Turner, we're doing the same thing. You have the control rooms that have the partitions to keep everybody. But if everybody is wearing a mask, there's 6 feet, there's a distance, but you have to wear your mask and keep that distance. Even on the stairs, like, I was on a tour with one of my senior production managers about something, and she was like running up the stairs. I was like, no, don't run up the stairs. Don't exert yourself. Like, we just have to stay 7 feet apart, 7 stairs apart. So just walk up the stairs. I'll walk after you. We won't overexert ourselves with our masks on, because I've been on those stairs plenty of times during the day, and it's tiring, where I have to go, oh my God, I'm about to die here. But, I need a breath of fresh air in a way. So yeah, keeping the distance and keeping people out, I'm glad to hear that everybody is doing that on set. That, it's just, it is going to take a lot of time. So.
Trisha, you were talking about the, constant being aware and cleaning, and I don't know if in the camera department, are you guys required to wear a face shield as well?
So yeah, anytime an actor removes their mask, then you are considered at high risk from the actor itself, so you and the gear. So yeah, so they do require safety goggles and masks and face shields if possible. And one of the things I actually brought out was somebody in the camera department who's an operator recommended these because we all wear, a lot of us wear glasses. He and I both wear glasses, but it's a clean slate, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
I'll check. A clean guard. It's a V90 clean guard shield. And it goes directly over the glasses and becomes the face shield. And then you put the mask on under it. So not only does it get rid of, you know, the strap issue that you're talking about, which it does wear on the ears. I highly recommend everyone get one of those little extra straps for it, or use a rope or something. To that stuff. Plus it also makes the mask straighter, which makes it tighter to the face, honestly, than when it's up kind of at an angle. But yeah, you have to wear this anytime an actor is going to remove their, you know, face mask, because you're putting them at greater risk. They're putting you at greater risk. And then it's really important to keep, this side is now COVID dirty. And so you need to keep it clean and be careful you don't put it down on a couch or, you know, rub it up against somebody or something. So it's like, you just have to kind of consider that everything that can get breathed on becomes contagious.
Trisha, can you wipe that off with alcohol wipes throughout the day?
So it's plastic, it's non-porous, it's like designed for safety in welding shops or something like that. And so like it has this, like, I don't know if you can see, but it has like a little gap in here, so it allows you to kind of breathe and allows a little airflow. And then it's got a suction like goggles that you go underwater, so that it creates airflow so that you're not breathing into your mask, so you're not clogging up your glasses, but at the same time it's a tight seal. So that way, like, I mean, clearly operators can't always wear this, but anyone like an ACI can always wear this. And because goggles sorting was literally the most annoying thing for the Steadicam op, for me, for like, you know, anyone that had to be on set and see, because it's just so humid and your breath gets really hot in the mask. And the other thing I will say is that I always thought I had really good dental hygiene and like kept my mouth smelling fresh, but like by hour 12, when you're breathing your own air in, like if you haven't eaten in 4 hours or like drink, like your breath smells. And so it's made me hyper aware of when we go out without masks eventually, like that I need to chew more gum and or eat. It's like, when I try not to eat a lot and snack on set, and like, by that 6th or 7th hour on the second half, I'm like, oh God. So,
The masks that they provided to us are not as nice as that. And you said Office Depot?
Yeah, so like they sell them on Amazon right now. There's a huge markup on them. Like you can buy them at Office Supply, different warehouses. So if you search for like the Clean Guard V90, like you'll come up with knockoffs and whatever. Like they're all pretty much the same, I think. And like this one's blue, but it's clear, you know, goggles. So
The problem with the one they gave to us, when I did go to wipe it down with alcohol, it took the coating off and blurry.
Oh yeah.
So for us, for other cheaper shields that they gave to us, soap and water is the only way to clean it, which is a difficult thing to do while you're on the set. But it's a really good point though about the masks and So alcohol ruined my face shield. So I'm gonna definitely be looking for that one.
Yeah, and I mean the producers have all been great from what I can tell. They literally have been supplying, you know, N95, because camera department again, we're high risk, so they have to be medical grade. So like the N95 mask, I mean, as soon as it got damp from sweat, like the COVID expert was like, change it, and she just had me swap them out, whether it was 30 minutes or 4 hours, like, and just so everyone knows, just like any sort of mask, like you do need to change them out every 4 hours because the filter in them gets full. And so if you ever breathe into your mask and it sucks into your face, like that means it's full, it's time to change it, whether it's, you know, for gas or for COVID or whatever, like anything that kind of sucks in, like same with your cloth mask. Like if it's sucking into your face more than it normally does, like you got to wash that thing and get a new one. But yeah, I think that's something that like we learned in our safety classes that I take out in LA, which are offered for LA purposes for producers and whatnot. But yeah, I think like providing your own gear sometimes like this is important. And I know certain camera departments on larger shows have requested these to be bought for their department without any complaint. The producers will comply. And then when other departments see them, and then they want them too. So I think it's something that will sort of become secondhand. I feel like producers in general, no matter what the budget is, are literally doing the most they can to make people safe. And something else to consider is, like I said, I came in as a day player. Somebody showed up with a fever and they sent them home. And so I had to come in that day and replace them. So I had to get same day tested, show up with my clean bill of health. And they still considered me 100% COVID positive, because that is the only way to approach anyone on a film set. And I thought, well, it's kind of stupid when I first got there, and was kind of like, this is dumb. Why did I even get tested? But then it's like, no, it's really important, because tests can be wrong. And, you know, we test people a lot, but tests can also be delayed. You know, it's like, you might not have a symptom today, but you might have one tomorrow. And as the COVID expert, you know, made a joke, was like, I don't know what window you licked on your way over here that you could have gotten COVID from. And I'm like, we don't know enough about it, that it's better just to assume everyone is sick, and everyone, you know, that you're sick, and that you protect yourself from others and protect, you know, others from yourself. And one thing I will also say is that the blue mask that you're like, they're meant to do everything in. So if you cough and sneeze, like, you're clearly supposed to sneeze into the mask. I did see somebody on our set who removed the mask, lifted their shirt, and sneezed down into their shirt. And I literally like had a conniption fit, because I was like, you're 4 feet from me and you removed your like medical grade mask to sneeze into your shirt. And they were like, well, the mask is, they get gross. And I was like, change it, wash it, clean, like that is the purpose. So again, it's one of those things where it seems weird and you might not like it, but you got to hunker down and, you know, be safe for everyone else. So
yeah, I think, go ahead,
Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's funny, because I've seen people too that are, for example, they give us green tents where we can go and sit, and there are 4 chairs in a pop-up tent that's considered safe to remove your mask and eat whatever you want to eat. And there's people I want to tell on, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet. You know, like, I want to tell this person, hey, you're not being, but I don't know who they are. They're a crew member. He could be anyway, it's just,
but you should say something.
Yes.
Find your COVID compliance officer. If anything, it's almost like back in the day, we trusted our producers, right? And if we saw something, we went, well, you know, so we're supposed to go to our producers and trust them. But now in these COVID times, if you see something, go to your COVID compliance officer, because they really have that type of authority to say, okay, here's how we're going to handle this. I always tell, like, when I first got to Turner, they were like, yeah, a lot of people were up in the lifts taking their masks off and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, we felt like snitches. And I was like, yeah, I'm production. I totally get where you're coming from. You don't want to be a snitch. But this is different. So
you're right.
Save yourself, save other people, and talk to your
those actors. Like, again, the actors are at so much risk that if you're masked and you think it's uncomfortable, like, imagine now they have to walk through that space or be present. So I do it for their benefit. And our COVID compliant officer literally was like, just hop on the walkie, you know, ask for the compliance medic to come, you know, and she gave me a code. And that's something you can ask them, like, hey, do you have like a nonchalant way for me to tell you somebody's not following the rules and where to go? And literally it was like, oh, I just need like 2 tabs of Advil. And because you're not actually allowed to take headache medicine on set anymore because it helps hide the fever. But then she would just show up to where you said you were, and she would see the person in offense, and then she'd correct the behavior, and nobody be the wiser, because most people are not on channel 1. So
and keep in mind too, it's education.
The CCO is there to correct the behavior straightforward without the producer being there. So your CCO can literally go up to that person and say, Trisha, mask, you know, and I had to do that at Warner Media, or Warner Media Studios it's now Turner. Anyway, I've had to do that where I'm going, hey, mask. There's like, I'm taking a drink. Just mask it up, or step away while you're taking a drink. Okay, like, I get it, you're thirsty, we have to hydrate, but your mask has to be on. And if you need to walk outside to take a drink, you might just have to walk outside to take a drink.
So much of it is education, because there's been so much information out there that we've become almost numb to it, and everything changes. Everything is a moving target. So there's a lot of people who don't realize that their behavior may be breaking the rules. Some people may try to push it, but I think overall everybody understands, if we have an outbreak and our industry shuts down because of it, like, we're all out of work until 2021, and nobody wants that, you know? So a lot of it is, these people aren't there to, hit you with the cattle prod and make you comply. They're there to say, hey, by the way, you may not realize the behavior that you're doing isn't correct. Here's why we don't want to do that. And here's what you can do to replace your behavior. Because a lot of it is just habit. You guys were talking a little bit about habit before that. We have been all making movies or TV shows or commercials or music videos or live events, whatever it is, for a really long time. We have this muscle memory, these quiet, intimate conversations that we have with people all day long. 90% of our job is walking up to someone and having a quiet conversation in the corner so a client can't hear, an agency can't hear, giving a note, maybe we're rolling, whatever it is. And you can't do any of those things. So breaking the habits are really hard. We don't have that intimacy anymore. And the other thing that I think is kind of a challenge now is because we have to yell to hear one another. People need.
It really is hard to hear through those masks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have this problem because I'm loud all the time. Like I'm having to this is my inside whisper voice. I'm whispering to you guys right
But that's the hardest thing is I'm loud too. And I'm usually super quiet on set because I've trained myself to be so quiet. Yeah. And now people cannot hear me. And it's really frustrating because you have to get through the layer of mask. You have to get through their layer of mask. You have to get through the 6 feet. It's like, there's just
but then you're spitting more stuff out there, So I think people really need to think about use your walkie-talkie, use technology. I mean, we're not supposed to have cell phones on set and they can interfere with, especially, Video Village and all the different remote things we have going on. That can be an issue.
Not much of that anymore.
Well,
there isn't.
There is, well, that's what I'm saying. There's not Video Village. You're broadcasting. So you're using channels that cell phones can interfere with is what I'm saying. So, I love the idea of hand signals. I mean, people need to figure out other ways to communicate because if we're all yelling behind a mask and a face shield, that's almost as bad as running up and down those stairs, So we have to think about that stuff.
In some ways, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, what are some of the other things, other than when you first walk on set? I mean, the first thing I want to do is give you all a hug. I want to hug you right here, in my living room. I mean, that's what we do. We're huggers. We're, that's what film people, we are loving, open people that it's family, the people that we work with. We've known people for years. Other than not, walking up to somebody and go, oh, that awkward moment where you realize you can't hug them. What are some of the other habits that you're seeing?
Can I tell a funny story?
No funny stories.
No funny stories. Okay. So my last job on set was March 2nd or whatever. And so this is right at what is this thing? This is coming. Is it affecting us? Now we're shut down, right? So it was just chaotic. And so my last set, and we were already kind of okay, so we need to be distance and there was no masks yet. And I remember the guys coming in on set and they were like, Megan. And I'm like, ooh, no, I don't want to hug you. And they're like, no, it's okay. And I'm like, see, there's this thing out here and I love you very much because you're a family and you want to hug them. But they all gave handshakes and hugs. And I was just kind of like, oh my God, you guys, this is really big. I don't think you really understand this, but what is happening is really big. And then of course, a week later we were shut down.
Yeah. I think it was March 17th, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it first happened, I mean, that was my last job and they wanted to hug. And even then I was like, ooh, I don't know if we really should be doing this. And I really want to give you a hug so bad because these are people, this is your second family. You're with these people for 12 plus hours, multiple times, multiple days of the week. But since then, now going back to set, it's just hi, how are you? And everybody is good. Sometimes it's an elbow. Sometimes
I hate the elbow because you're not in 6 feet with the elbow. Stop with the damn elbow.
I know. I don't like the elbow either. I'm just kind of hey, how are you?
The demolition man where you're like this and you just,
Yeah, I don't like the foot tap and I don't like the elbow. It's too close. I have even my neighbors in Florida, shortly after that happened, we had some neighbors. I have a house in Florida, rental property that we disappeared to when JD's job got shut down for 6 months. And then it went away completely about a month ago. But, I had some neighbors that live in North Georgia who are, come over to borrow a tool. And like both JD and I couldn't jockey ourselves, you know, and I finally had to tell people like, step off. Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but you need to be 6. I don't care. They weren't even wearing masks and they were trying to get in my space. And I'm like, look, people, no, I take this seriously. And I've had some, you know, our AC broke a week and a half ago and the guy's at the front door in a mask and he didn't need to come in the house, but I was like, you need to back up off my porch. And once you get down the stairs, I'll open the door and we can have a conversation. But you know, what are some of the other habits that you, go ahead, Trish.
So clean sets, you know, you've always had a clean set where you're not supposed to put anything there or touch. So I'm an AC and often we're reframing the shot and there was a telephone that like literally I just had to move to kind of get in the shot and mark, and literally the art department person like and like runs over and like makes a big kavah, and it's like, oh shoot, the actor touches this. And so it's that like it was totally my bad and I didn't think about it because it's just something I do every day on set anyways. And now that's like, no, now you actually do have to clear the set, have art department come over, make the adjustment, like then everyone, they leave and you come back. Like it seems so ridiculous when you're there and you're trying to get the shot before sunset and whatnot. But at the same time, like it's so important. And so when you walk into anything that is a set, you should assume it's all been wiped down and you shouldn't, one, stand in there without a mask ever, and you shouldn't touch anything that you do not have to. And then if I touched anything, just like if I moved something on set, I would tell art department, hey, I touched that, I had to move it, or like whatever. Because that stuff is not only now just for their job information, but is also now for safety of actors and yourselves and anyone else. Because they're not gonna clean everything over and over and over again, assuming everyone came through and touched everything. Like you need to tell them I touched something or I moved a chair or whatnot. Like that stuff becomes really important. And that same thing where it's like, it's just an apple box. Like it's not you to touch the apple box anymore. It's like you're assigned your apple box that you move around and you clean up and then you hand, you know, put down for a grip to then clean and take. And those kind of things, like that never happened before. You know, it's like you just kind of borrowed and took and moved, and there was, you know, union, you know, designation of jobs, but there was crossover. And now it's like, you know, it's like we moved most of our own, you know, stuff that grips would normally help us carry. And it's just like, they're not being mean and you're not being, you know, dumb or whatever for not accepting help. It's like, those are now habits that you have to break and you have to isolate, because if camera department gets sick and grips have been in close, then the grip department's sick too. And so it's like, you don't want to be the person that like ruins 2 entire departments for a producer, you know, and, or like gets an actor sick or so it just, it becomes very, you know, important.
Sarah, are you guys having 10-hour days? I've heard some shoots are having 10 hours, some are not. I think the new protocols, once all the studios agree on everything, they're pushing for 10 hours. How do you feel that has changed things? I mean, you still got to be exhausted by the end of the day.
Well, what's interesting is we have an earlier pre-call now to give us time to sanitize and organize from the night before, because now we have a system whereby it's a cleaning, it's a 3-part cleaning system. So we take each actor's bag and put it through a cleaning, a disinfecting, and a sterilization and a drying process. So I've literally taped a heavy mill plastic sheet at one far end of the trailer up in the crow's nest that's taped up. No one is allowed in there except for basically us, you know, the makeup artists, because we understand what needs to happen. We obviously are masked, or we clean our hands before we go in there. And then it's just we do that whole process in that room, and we have a drawer for each actor where their items dry properly overnight, because that's part of the sterilization process. I forgot what you asked me.
10-hour days.
Oh yeah, sorry. So okay, so the 10-hour days are not so much for us as they are for the actors. I think, right?
Well,
yeah.
my understanding
of
the
day later. Yeah. So it's been about 13-hour days for me personally and my crew. Just because of pre-calls, just because we come in earlier than everybody else. But we have running lunches, and that's been very interesting.
So is this like the French hours where you don't necessarily have a true lunch break, but you just kind of get your lunch and move throughout the day?
Yeah, and if you can, within your department, if you can break someone for 30 minutes, then by all means do. And then they have catering is so cleverly set up. you just tell them through a sheet of plastic, I want that, and they put it in a box and hand it to you, and everybody has a brown paper bag, and then finds a place to eat. And then with it, and if they do get to break, then there is a tent for eating, and there's tables that are all 10 feet apart with 2 chairs, one on either end, and that's lunch. So that's pretty funny. I gotta get a picture of that, because it just looks so. I used to really enjoy having lunch with the crew, because it was, you're breaking bread with your family, and I just love that. But that's no more. No, you eat all by yourself. So that's been interesting. Yeah, they're calling it a running lunch. I don't know why. I don't know the difference. French hours, running lunch. That's what it's called. So. Yeah.
So it was my understanding that, and obviously all the unions haven't come together to finalize the safe way forward. I mean, or whatever their plan is. I think that was the SAG one, but they're working to get all of these protocols in agreement with all of the unions and guilds. And my understanding out of that was that it was going to call for 10-hour days. And I'm hearing from a lot of people that very few people are having 10-hour days. It's got to be exhausting, because our job is exhausting enough. 12, 13 hours, that's like a half day. I mean, it's, 14, 16, 18 hours aren't unheard of, less in features and TV. Well, some jobs, but we have these super long hours, which are exhausting as it is, especially as the day begins to shift, where you may start at 6 a.m. on a Monday and start at 6 p.m. on a Friday. But how much more exhausting is it? Because of your brain is now focusing not only on all the stuff that used to exhaust you before, but now you're wearing a mask, which is exhausting. Now you're thinking about safety, which is that fear, that fear-based thought, that fight or flight, that is sucking your adrenaline, even if you're not feeling it. I mean, in the background, like a program on your laptop, when it's shut off, your adrenaline's still cycling, thinking about all this stuff. Like, how much more exhausting is it to be on set?
Right. And also to be, to have, say, a crew. I've got four makeup artists that I work with on a pretty regular basis. And so it's not just me going through the motions. It's me making sure that my crew and we're all on that same page. And I have to, point at my crew. I'm like, you now have to go and empty that bag out and sanitize it, because you just threw a dirty mask in the bag because you didn't want to touch it. Well, A, you touched it. B, you threw it in a bag full of product. So I sent it back to the trailer. So it's, there's that. So it's not just me. It's like, and I'm going to have up to 10 makeup artists working with me pretty soon. And I don't know. Doing background. And that is a learning curve I have yet to maneuver. I'm not sure how to do.
Yeah, background is going to be an interesting thing. I know, speaking with the Screen Actors Guild and speaking with some producers some of their jobs went away, it was because they had huge background scenes. And when they looked at doing it all in visual effects, the budget came to be too much. So they thought, you know what, we're going to put this one down. We're going to bring it back when things are different and hope we can tell this story. But I'm surprised that, here you guys are going to have extras. It's going to be interesting. Do you know anything of how the protocol of that's going to work? I mean, I know that's not your job, but I have to imagine you guys have had conversations about that.
I have had them in my brain, but my whole thought is like the less contact, the better. So I'm creating video tutorials for light-skinned women and dark-skinned women, so that in case they don't know how to do their makeup, I'll offer a product list of things they can buy at CVS, which are long wear, lip staining, that kind of thing, products. And my thought is that instead of having background so we have 156 background on a lot of days, and they're all in wedding makeup. And my first thought is, well, I imagine when they come in, they'll be given a chair. I don't know. And then they should just bring their little chair over to me. And then I really have not sorted it out. but my goal is to be as specific as I can through extras casting to provide video tutorials for the women and very specific information for the men. And then I have little CC cups with lids for that have, if a man needs some color, I can hand it to them. Tell them to go into the bathroom and put it on like lotion, or step over to this. I'll have an extra station just for background. If they're 6 feet apart, they can go up to that station, and then we're there to just to go, hey, that looks great. Good job. Come over here. Let me spray some mattifying all over your face. Okay, now go away. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, at least we're moving into fall, which is going to make that working with extras easier because it'll be cooler. You don't have to worry about people melting constantly. So that'll be a big help. What are some of the other things that you guys, you know, I mean, Sarah's talking about things that she's having to kind of invent. I mean, we've all been working in an industry where we don't really reinvent the wheel. Maybe there's new technologies we use, but the wheel may change from cement to wood to rubber, but it's still a wheel and it still rolls. Like movies have been made the same way for all these years because it works, you know, but you're inventing new ways of doing things and having to figure this out as you go, because that's kind of how we're all working about this. You know, what are some of the things, Trish and Megan, you guys have seen where you're like, this doesn't work. Like, we have to come up with a new way. Have you encountered that at all yourselves?
I think having like a designated cleaning person in your department, like I've literally talked to all the department heads that I know that are going back to work, and after being on sets, like, it's too much to assume somebody who already does two people's jobs. You know, it's like sometimes, you know, especially like on-set deck, like an on-set deck does a lot of work for one person. So like they now need somebody that's strictly in there just to clean up after or between or during and to be the one to watch. And with camera, it's the same way. It's like, I can't just take a lens and swap it out. I have to bring it back, clean it. You know, it's like all that stuff takes so much more time, which, you know, producers don't really want to wait on, and they have to, and they're understanding to some extent. But having a designated cleaning person for cables and for lenses and things like that. So I think each department should push for that kind of stuff. I know on most shows, I feel like the 10-hour day is not really happening. The 12-hour day is. I haven't heard a lot of shows going over 12, including wrap and pre-calls. So I think that's a good change. I feel, I know our union in general, like, has always been really against French hours, which is not really what they do here in America. They literally just work through lunch and they pay meal penalties. So when people are excited about French hours, they're not actually, French hours, you don't get meal penalties. It's part of the trade-off. So that's why they call them working meals, or running meals, I guess is what they're called. Like, it's very good to designate that lingo, because what you associate as French hours and when they're contract negotiating, like, that's not what you're actually negotiating for, and you should know the difference. And so I think that's something that, like, hopefully we won't have to keep doing these running meals and working meals, because people like camera, we don't get breaks. And especially when you're wearing masks, you know, they tell you, we're going to make sure that you get a break every hour to get off set and take water and mask. But that stuff falls away very quickly, because again, you're still fighting daylight, you're still fighting the hours. You know, producers are doing better, but they're still, and especially DPs who are in my department, like, they're still scheduling with the conception of, this is what we used to be able to get done, I'll just tack, you know, 10% less. But it's like, no, it's more like 30 or 40% less, especially those first few weeks when you're kind of getting used to everything. And, you know, so unless you're doing Tyler Perry style, where you're literally quarantined beforehand, everyone's tested, and then you're all quarantined to the lot, like, then I guess you could be slightly more lax, but those are very few and far between. So, and the things like day playing, I think, are kind of over.
I mean, it's true. We both Screen Actors Guild, you know, that's the problem, though. I think that because you need more breaks, things take longer. So scheduling is super important. And, you know, we're hearing that we want less crew on set, because less crew, or you know, whether it's on set or off set, but less crew on the production, because we want less bodies. The problem is we need more bodies and more time and more money for PPE, more money because it takes more time. I mean, to me, I see this as, in some ways, the death of a lot of independent film, because we can't, we don't have enough money for a camera or to feed people a decent lunch, let alone have the money to buy all the PPE and take the time. And, JD was working on a movie that is not happen. Well, it may happen. I don't know, but it doesn't look like his next movie will be the one he started prep on. And, when they were going through this summer, it was a big challenge because he's saying like, the studio wants to spend less money on the movie because now they're going to spend all their money on the visual effects. And it's like, well, where are we going to cut the money from? And they're, well, let's make it a 20-day schedule instead of a 25-day schedule. And it's like, but okay, but we can't shoot it in 20 days without COVID. Like now it's really a 35-day schedule because of COVID, because everything is going to take longer. And that pushback with producers, producers want to do everything they can to make us safe, we hope, because they don't want to be sued. That shit would scare the hell out of me. I don't want to ever get anybody sick or kill somebody on the way home. Like that terrifies me. But the studios should also be in that same position, because if something goes wrong and an actor, if we kill the Batman, if we kill Tom Hanks, if we kill, anybody, like this is bad for our industry, and I don't know how to fix that. I'm hoping that when all the unions come together, it will be for shorter days and they will be thinking about all this stuff, but that really is a challenge. But Megan, did you have something that you wanted to say about things that you're seeing? It's different because you weren't kind of at Turner and they're a new system. But I also know the people there and they're pretty good.
So my whole job is to see things like what Trisha's got, this eye goggle thing, because we do have an entertainment show that's coming in at the end of this month. And one of their requests is got eye goggles on for camera department. So on Friday, I was talking to my PPE supply department about, okay, well, the company is asking for goggles. Do we have these goggles? They're giving me, safety goggles. But what Trisha just showed me, I'm definitely going to take that and I'm going to present it over to my team and be like, hey guys, what about this? Can we do this? Will the company accept this as a better alternative than just glasses, face mask, and face shield? So thank you, Trisha. I appreciate that. So that's my whole job.
Dave Comides, he's a local 600 member, and yeah, he's the one he's been posting a lot on his Facebook page about starting up. He's on a good show, a studio network with celebrities. I would like to say that there's a big difference between the shows that have actors, like you said, that are recognizable, that the press really care about if they get sick, versus the shows that are more, reenactment or reality shows where people don't know. Like, I feel like there is a difference there. And I was actually offered to shoot like an indie project, paid for 2 days, when in August, and I turned it down. And the person that offered, got a little offended because they were like, I wouldn't have offered you this job if I didn't think that people were going to be safe. And I told them, listen, I just don't think it's realistic to shoot like a no budget or super low budget kind of project in 2 days with what's going on, because you can't keep the crew safe, you can't keep yourself safe. And I'm not saying those people that are producing it aren't safe. I'm saying that, again, I, as a person who care a lot, screwed up often and, required a lot more time and training. And it's like, how do you schedule as a DP a day when you have no idea if like what's going to slow it down or what kind of cleaning now it takes until you're in it and doing it? And I think a lot of the really big shows and big network shows and movies and whatnot, they're over scheduling, which is awesome. It's like they're taking an 8-day show and they're making it a 15-day show. And I think that does not sound excessive at all now that I've been on sets. So
yeah.
I'm gonna thank you for.
Yes, you've got to go. It's 2:12. I'm sorry, we kept you longer. Thank you so much.
It was a learning curve again. Thank you. I learned so much today. Thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Everybody stay safe, be well, and I look forward to hearing from everyone in the future.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah, and have a great show, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, take care. Thanks so much.
Bye.
I did want to add to the cleaning of what I've been fortunate enough to have a housekeeping staff because Warner Media has housekeeping. They have been excellent in keeping up with handrails and high touch points. So as long as cleaning crews that are out there are doing that, that's tremendous, you know, to help with that whole. But even the vendors have said that they aren't, you know, checking in a lot of their gear because of what you just said, Trisha. I mean, the old days, I've witnessed it. I've been a PA. I've been there where you go, here's this lens, give me this lens, and then that person does that, and then how do you clean that lens? And even if you let it sit for 3 days, somebody still has to touch it. Do you guys use gloves when you're doing this, or?
So I think gloves are not the solution because
yeah,
when they're wearing gloves, they forget they're still touching things and they're just spreading the disease, just not directly to their hands.
But what about just for this transfer? Because I do know gloves are horrible, but just for this transfer, is somebody putting a glove on, taking it?
If you have a lens that came off a camera that an actor potentially breathed on, you're going to take that contagious lens, touch it in your glove. Your glove is now passing it to everything you touch. So like I said, before I touched anything, I always sanitize my hands. So in case I had touched something, I'm not adding to it. Then you would sanitize the object and then put it away and then sanitize your hands again and then take a new item out. So it's like there is no handoff anymore. It's now like you do one thing at a time.
Oh, okay.
One of the things the camera department came up with, which I thought was actually kind of brilliant, was in front of every lens, regardless, there's always a clear filter, because the clear filter you can actually wipe down with the alcohol without ruining the filtration.
Nice.
And it's always in front. So you actually never have to clean the front element of the lens. Now, one thing is we weren't cleaning the sides of the lenses, and this was my mistake again from learning curve, but the COVID expert, you know, compliance officer told us, oh, when you put that away, like the air has hit the sides of the lens. So even though the front is protected by the glass, like you need to still clean the outside edge. And now you put it away in a case. Now that case becomes a petri dish for COVID is how they described it. So if you do leave it for 3 days, like all the case is just growing bacteria in their world, especially in the heat and humidity. So like, you know, they came to us at sunset as this, you know, day was lost, the very last shot of the day. And it's like, what do you want me to do about it? And it was very frustrating at the moment. And it's just like, I had to go and apologize because I'm like, listen, I understand you're doing your job, and I should have been calmer at that one moment, even though like everyone's like, get the shot, we're losing light. And again, that kind of mentality takes over in different places in the day, and you can't let it. Like, you do have to step back and say, no, I need the extra 2 minutes to properly clean the whole lens before I put it away and make the case dirty. And because once the case is dirty, then you got to clean the case and everything you put in it. And so it just becomes these kind of like spiral things. And yeah, gloves are definitely not the solution. Like I said, I think over hand sanitizing, it's like just sanitize before, sanitize after, sanitize during. Like when I go to grocery stores, like you're touching groceries that other people have touched. You don't know whether they're clean or not. I don't take them home and like wipe them down like my aunt does. But I always sanitize my hands where I touch them, and then I sanitize them after I'm done touching it. And that's true of even in my kitchen now, because I don't want to be the one that gets sick or shows a symptom and then I can't work for 3 weeks because I had a positive COVID test, because producers and everyone's going to see that you had a positive test and they're going to make you do a 3-week quarantine. So it's like, I don't even want to take that risk. So now those people who don't believe it's real and don't wear masks, or like even out in the real world, like I'm super social distance. I spend most of my time on Zoom calls or in my house. When I do go out, I always wear an N95 mask. I purchased extra ones, which sucks, you know, for the medical field, but I just don't trust it anymore.
Yeah. And I think, you know, a couple of things you said there were really important. Like I wouldn't, you know, like in my rental house, I'm a vacation rental. So unlike many of my neighbors who don't believe this is real, I separated rentals by 3 days so that my cleaning staff wouldn't have to come in and clean every single thing. How you can't sanitize an entire house, you know? So I have specialty filters. They do all the touch surfaces and all the coving cleaning that is recommended, but I put over 3 days in between everything. But you know, the idea that you could put a lens in a case that may not be clean, and then now that case is going to sit there for 3 days, like it seems like, oh yeah, it'll sit there for 3 days, so you have less to worry about. But you don't have less to worry about because you're creating a petri dish. That's really important. I think the other thing you talked about, and what I'm seeing, especially in Georgia, and I'm sure in every other place, New York and LA, Chicago, you know, Austin, the places that are, that have a market, and there are more, sorry if I forgot your state. But, you know, I know 479 sent out an email to all of their entire roster saying, you know, keep in mind, it's not just about what you do on set. It's what you do when you're not on set. We have people to keep you in line here. And if you're not wearing a mask or an N95 face shield, there's some shows where you're dismissed immediately. There is no course correction. Oh, you don't think wearing a mask, you think you can put that under your nose? Bye-bye. I'll find somebody who wants to play by the rules. But, you know, 479 is talking to those people who don't necessarily take it as seriously, saying, look, if you're doing things in your off time that are going to affect your time on set, this is bad. And what has heartened things for me is looking around at our community, and most of our community is completely behind that. You know, people have been staying inside their houses. They haven't been, you know, I mean, other than to exercise and to get out, but they aren't going and sitting inside restaurants. They're not going inside a gym. They're going to their park and working out. They're really conscious of what's going on, because they know, again, if you're the one who gets sick and you bring it to set and you if one show shuts down because we have a massive outbreak, that means not just the state of Georgia may shut down, we may shut down an entire industry if we see something like that happens, and nobody wants our industry to remain shuttered. And I think that's a huge thing that people need to keep in mind, especially if you're watching this and you haven't gone back to work, because we're all watching each other's social media feeds. There's a woman I won't hire anymore, and I talked about this on another one. She posted online, and I hope she's watching. She probably won't be, but she posted online that, you know, she doesn't like breathing through a mask. It's a problem for her. So what she does is she works in commercials, and what she does is she goes into the bathroom and takes her mask off and just sits there as long as she can have a break, breathing in the bathroom so she's going to sit in the bathroom for 15 minutes with her mask off. Then I'm going to walk in and use the same one. And I'm thinking, this is not a solution, honey. What is your problem? You know, and I've marked her off as, okay, I can't hire her anymore because she doesn't get it. You know, so the fact that she even posted that, I thought, that isn't a course correction issue. That is somebody who really doesn't understand. And we are all watching each other's social media to see what one another is doing. And we're making decisions on that, because we don't want, you know, if you're a mask hole or a COVIDiot, like, we don't want to work with you. You know, we want to work with people who take this seriously. What else are you guys seeing what are you seeing as the things that people break the most? You know, not purposefully, you know, not necessarily like nefariously, but like just we forget or we get lax, other than the social distancing and the mask on the nose.
Well, I can say for me as a health and safety officer, the thing is pulling your mask down. We had to go through so many changes creating our health and safety documents, where it was, okay, if you're at your desk, you can take your mask off. Okay, now it's changed. If you're at your desk, you have to keep your mask on. If you're in a shared space, you have to keep your mask on. If you're in a room by yourself, like an audio room, you can take your mask off. Okay, so we went through these like different stages, and maybe that memo didn't get to a few people in a certain department, where I feel like a COVID compliance officer that I'm telling on these people constantly. There's this one person that I'm just, okay, had to talk to him again, and I can't necessarily fire him because he's staff and I'm temp, and I know I can technically, but it's a really weird thing. Like, really, can I? You know, I mean, you say I can, but I can't. But every email, every CCO notes that I send at the end of the night, okay, he's not listening again. He's drinking and eating. You know, he was in a room. This guy was in a room with two people. They were 6 feet apart, but his mask was down. And I was like, hey, put your mask on, you know. And he was like, oh, I'm drinking a water. And I was like, well, actually, you really shouldn't be drinking a water when you're in a room with somebody and your mask is down. Like, so there we are, you know, could you step out of the room? Maybe like, he's in the room, you're in the hallway and you're drinking or so. I mean, so the biggest thing to keep on people is just keeping their masks on, and making sure, like, when they do have their mask on, before I pounce on them or whatever, it's like, okay, do they have food? Do they have water? You know, is this like a, you know, mask down and you're drinking? Well, no, I'm not going to yell at you for that, because you have to stay hydrated, right? Yeah. Or, you know, with this mask, go dehydrate yourself. So it's really keeping people with their masks on and keeping doors open. to create airflow. And hoping people wash their hands. I mean, we have an ingress where people do hand washing before when they enter into the building. So, keeping that up and just reminding them to wash their hands. I get into work, I sanitize the pens when my shift starts. So
I carry my own pen everywhere I go. So like if if I go to do takeout in Florida where they don't believe in masks, I live in Trump country down there. They don't really believe in masks. And luckily in our little area, very few people have gotten sick. So they haven't gone through whatever, they don't know a lot of people who've gotten it or have gotten sick. But yeah, curbside pickup. I won't walk in. I bring my own pen, I'm very, very conscious of that. And I do, like when I go to the farmer's market, they're like, hey, do you want some hand sanitizer? And I'm like, I really don't, but I'll take some because I know how important it is. I mean, I really fucking hate hand sanitizer so much, but I also know I have to use it. Like I'm all about hand washing. Like I got no problem washing my hands, but in a situation where I'm going into the grocery store or going into a farmer's market, I want to make sure that I'm making other people feel comfortable. And if I say, no, I don't want your hand sanitizer, I look like an asshole. I'm not an asshole. I came with clean hands, I didn't touch anything.
But they don't know that.
But they don't know that. So that's why I do that. And I think, I remember the film office years ago as their little swag thing, like the Georgia Film Office has given out mugs and, they'll show up on set and give swag to people. And they had little hand sanitizer on a carabiner for people. And this was like a decade ago. And I thought that was one of the smartest things because I'm the only person I know that hates hand sanitizer. And I gave them out to everybody on set because I thought it was a great idea to keep things clean. And I think maybe that's something that you think about. Like they had a little spritz one. Like it wasn't like a big glop of stinky gooey stuff. It's like a little, it's not as disgusting to me. It still has the smell, but it's not as much. But literally, they squirt my hands and I do this and then I walk in. So it may be having hand sanitizer inside or outside of these rooms, depending on, I guess I don't know where in Turner you are, but most of the hallways at Turner are pretty wide.
Yeah.
So maybe there's little stations you guys can set up outside.
We have stations. We have, they have a box of PPE supplies in all of their control rooms. So our job, not only to do our rounds to make sure people are wearing masks and things. And I mean, hey, you could be working. That's great. But if your mask is down, put it on. I don't care if you're calling, 3, 2, 1. Okay, take camera A. Put your mask on, dude. Sorry, Yeah. But in all the rooms, they have PPE supplies. So we have to constantly keep those up. We supply KN95s, which aren't the N95s, but they're KN. I personally like these because I get chew gum in them to help with the breath thing.
Oh, yeah.
They have their blue masks. They have hand sanitizer, rubbing alcohol, face shields. We just had a new set of face shields, but then I'm going to look into those face shields. We do have gloves. Not a lot of people use them. However, I do have a makeup artist that will come in and update the talent kits. So what I've asked her to do is wear gloves for all of our talents, but 2 specifically because they do have issues. So, when you go in there, use your gloves and wipe everything down at the same time. So we also use housekeeping does blue tapes. So they blue painter tape the door and that's their sanitize. Now that will eventually go away, but for right now, the morning shift CCO person is supposed to come in, check all the rooms, make sure there's blue tape. If there wasn't a blue tape on it or it was removed, then we have to check with the engineer department because most likely they've gone in there to troubleshoot something to get ready for a show. So we check with the engineer department. If they haven't been in there, then we recall housekeeping to come back up and clean it, blue tape it, seal it off. So that way when the crew comes in, they're coming into an already clean room. Now, there have been instances where we've had to switch control rooms midday where we'll schedule a housekeeping. But if one AD is coming in the morning and switching out for another AD for one of those, since we're in NBA playoffs, just to try to change up the shift, every person is supposed to come in, wipe down their area, regardless of it being blue taped. You come in, you wipe the knobs down, you clean your stuff. That it's in the health and safety documents that we send out to all crew members. So you have to clean off. That's why I said I clean my pens, I clean the little clipboard I have for my check-in. And because I had to check in and make sure who's on campus and that way know their location and who they are, and then possibly it'll give me a list of where they're sitting in that location in case a case happens. So that's really my job.
Yeah. Which makes sense because, I mean, you know, so much of what we've all been doing all summer, a lot of commercials, a lot of TV shows, you know, we've been in big cavernous spaces. We haven't gone into these small offices. Like, winter's coming. You know, you're already inside. I mean, luckily, most of Turner Studios, which is where I'm, you know, all that, the spaces that you're working in have been built in an era unlike the old parts of the Turner building, which are much safer ventilation wise, you know. But I worry about crews this winter. And Trish, I don't know how you feel about this, but you know, we're going to start doing, you know, more stuff inside. The big stages, I think they've all done a lot of ventilation work. I don't know how much on location stuff is going to happen, but you know, shoots are going to be from moving outside to moving inside into smaller spaces, more people, less ventilation, somewhat less control. How are you feeling about that? Or what are you hearing crew talk about? You know, I mean, we've got people who are saying, I'm not going to work until there's a vaccine. We've got other people who are like, I can't get back to work fast enough. I have this thing called mortgage and food that I need. You know, how do you feel about winter coming and the changes that is going to make shooting wise? Or am I crazy?
Well, I think for the most part, like I said, the shows that I've been on actually have done a good amount inside. I mean, outside is easier, but you still have to keep 6 feet. But yeah, I mean, inside, like I said, so you have to wear the mask 24/7 inside at all times, and they have air filters and circulating and that kind of stuff. But like, that's what made those days rough. And I know a lot of people are on sound stages, especially like people in New York, which, you know, not as much Atlanta Film Fest, but like they literally can't shoot on streets anymore. It's harder to get permits. It's harder to control public population. Cause like, you know, it's like, we kind of know on indies and whatever, like you can ask people not to cross your set, but you can't actually stop them. So like, that's not really an option anymore for actors and stuff. So a lot of places are actually, they're able to control it inside. So I think a lot of people are already shooting inside. The heat of the summer has been horrible. So I'm actually excited for the cold because like, at least you won't get the acne and like you won't get like it won't be quite as hard on the body. Like, you know, so you can bundle up and protect yourself even more from COVID by covering yourself with gloves and everything. But yeah, I think like if people aren't addressing those issues now in the same way, like I don't think the season change. And there's definitely people I know that aren't working. I won't do non-union right now. Like I said, like it's so hard to keep the union set safe that like doing non-union to me just seems kind of crazy. I mean, some producers, especially commercial, like I would actually vary that because commercials always treat people like they're union, whether they're non-union or not. But like, especially when it comes to like a no budget Friends film, like that's putting a lot of people at risk for a film that may never get seen. And like, I'm a big, you know, indie person, but like I told my producers, like, I'm not going to shoot anything until there's a vaccine and it's safe because indies can't really afford it. And they think they can, but they can't. And I mean, like I said, even union shows are struggling with that. And they have billion-dollar budgets, some of them. And so, yeah, so I think like that's the bigger shift to think about is, you know, if you are going to do it, like tiny crews outside, and yeah, that's not going to be as much of an option. And I was pleased to know that, like, I heard a producer themselves, they were a showrunner producer on set. And they were like, yeah, we shot in this one location that they had scouted before COVID. And they're like, we're not ever doing that again. They're like, we'll always pick much bigger places. They're like, it's not worth the risk. It's not. So I think that's nice to hear is that, like I said, producers and stuff, they don't want to kill you. They don't want to have their show be the one that shuts down. And like Linda said a number of times, like the government wants to step in and shut down unions and shut down a lot of things. So if they want to shut down filmmaking, and producers have no say in that, like studios aren't going to have any say in that. If, you know, some big hubbub dies or like huge outbreaks and it spikes, like the government could easily step in and just shut filming down without producers having a say or without unions having a say. So it's really important that we do follow protocols. And even if you do think they're stupid, that you listen, because they're not stupid. There are, you know, hundreds of thousands of people dying. And I'm a person that's like, this isn't even airborne technically. Like and it's think about like how much and how easily it spreads. Like just be aware. Yeah.
You know, I got a, you know, I've been telling, so I run the PA Academy. Megan has been out to speak to the kids there. So, you know, 4 times a year, I bring 100 people in from all over the country, some from out of the, across many, many miles from out of the country. I had somebody from Mexico and 2 women from Saudi Arabia take the class last. We're not doing that now because none of us want to get in a room with 100 people. But, you know, there are kids who are in Georgia or in other markets that are on the secret Facebook page that we talk to. And, you know, I've told them to be very careful about taking independent film jobs. Also be very careful about non-union jobs. You know, there are some shows, especially if they're not SAG, if there's no SAG, I mean, if it's completely non-union, there are some, you know, union, there are some shows in town that are crew union and not cast union, but that's simply because the networks that they work for can't pay the money for the airing. You know, there's financial obligations. It's not because they can't pass the SAG protocols. They're doing all the SAG protocols. They just don't have the money for Screen Actor Guild actors. And then there's other shows that may not, you know, that have union actors and may have non-union crew. And as long as, to me, as that a union is involved somewhere, union or guild is involved somewhere, I feel pretty good about it. SAG, they're not messing around. Like SAG-AFTRA does not play. And if you don't have your protocols together, you are not going to move forward on that show. They will shut you down, end of discussion. And I feel the same way on 479 and 600. Like, people aren't going to tolerate that. But I got, you know, an email 2 days ago that there's a big commercial coming in, big budget, big commercial coming into town, and it's non-union. Am I interested? You know, and I'm not taking work right now. I'm on my very, very long hiatus. And I said, you know, no, I'm not interested. And I passed them a couple of names. Well, I didn't actually at first pass them names because I was like, you're non-union. I'm not going to do that. You didn't ask me for recommend, so I'm not going to give them. Then he reached back out, you know, if you aren't, you know, available, could you recommend someone? And I said, well, here's 3 names. And, you know, if they're not available, I completely trust whoever they'd recommend. But I just had no interest on working something that has, to me, no accountability. Mm-hmm. You know, the unions right now are our accountability. And if it isn't for them, I don't trust anybody to keep us safe. I don't care how great a producer they are. I don't even trust me and I feel like I'm a really good producer of independent film. I'm not about to shoot right now because it's too much money and too much time. So I think that's something that people really need to consider. You know, obviously everybody has a different comfort level. Some people feel comfortable working on these shows and some people don't have a choice. Financial obligations are real. You know, if something is paying, people have to take those jobs. They have mouths to feed. Do you guys have recommendations on what questions you should ask before, you know, when you get a call for work? What should you ask? Not just, hey, are you guys going to have PPE for us? Because that's a pretty easy question for them to say yes to. You know, Trisha, when you came back to work, did you ask specific questions?
So I didn't, because one, it was a union show and I know there were certain protocols in place and I knew somebody was already working on the show who felt very safe. But I mean, now, like I said, when I get asked for jobs, first thing I ask, if they don't ask me if I have a test and how I'm going to get tested beforehand, then they're not asking anyone else for tests. And so that's something to heavily consider. Like, if they're not testing people before, then especially I've heard a lot of like 3-day commercials that people are like, you know, we test people and then there's only 3 days. And if they get sick, we're done. And that's kind of the mentality. Again, not for like other commercial people, but some of them have found the sketchy route. There's definitely sketchy producers out there. So yeah, I mean, I asked them that, and you can actually ask them, what are your safety protocols? They should have them in writing and they can email them to you most times. The packet on the show I had, like, it's for that whole studio. Like, it was literally like 47 pages and they handed it to me on the day of. And I was like, I wish I had this in advance because some of the things I didn't do that I didn't know were in that packet that they wanted me to read before I started work. But we all know how it is. I came in, you know, late and covering for somebody, and I just started working thinking I'll pick it up as we go. But it's like you're learning from people who are learning. Like you want to know in advance and follow the rules. So yeah, I would definitely.
I think those are two really important things. Ask about their testing protocol, and also ask if they have guidelines they can send you in advance, because then, and you don't have to, you don't have to approach it like, I want to see if these guys are real or not. This is, hey, do you have guidelines I can read in advance so I make sure I do the right thing when I show up?
The other thing I asked about was craft service, because for me, I'm like, do I need to bring my own food and drink? Because they're long days, and what are they offering? Like, what are they serving for lunch? How are they serving lunch? Like, those are important to me. I asked a crew member, not the producers, that question, because it seemed kind of stupid to ask, but it was very valuable to know that. And yeah, I asked whether they had provided PPE, and I was told, yeah, they had that. But all that stuff is good. That you shouldn't assume, especially on a non-union, like they might expect you to bring your own face shield and face mask and whatever, because they don't have the money, and you should know that, because if you show up, you're going to get sent right home. The other thing is, if they don't check your temperature when you first come to set, like that's literally the most basic thing they can do. So I would be worried about anything that didn't do that. But yeah, I mean, you can ask length of day. I did ask, like, how, I always ask that on every job, where is it and how long, so it's like, how far am I going to have to drive to get there? Like, and then like, how many hours am I going to be there on top of that? But that's always what I ask anyways. But I think that stuff's really valuable now, and knowing whether you're inside and outside, it's the same thing as like seeing the call sheet in advance. It's like, that stuff's all going to give you information. It's going to tell you how many people are on the crew, how many people are on set, which all affects whether you want to do the job or not. It's like some shows you can tell right away they don't care, and other ones you can tell they care a lot. And like, I'm a person that I'm not financially strapped, so I won't take work unless I feel it's really safe. But I'm in the luxury position to do that. Not a lot of people are. And so I don't feel, I don't want to have anyone condemn anyone for taking a job, or, it's like, don't belittle somebody for taking a job that you think is unsafe or whatever. Cause like, just like our fast food workers and stuff that were sent back way too early. It's like, they don't have a choice, it's that, or they starve, or they're homeless. And so you can't condemn other people. So that's the other thing, is when you're on set, it's like, be very courteous to people. If you see somebody breaking rules, like I said, go through proper channels, or politely say, hey, did you know you're supposed to keep your nose covered? Because they might just not know. And, you don't know what's in their life. So I say, if anything, now is a time for people to be really, really, kind to one another. You can't touch one another, but you can show each other love, emotional support and that sort of stuff. And, and if you hear jobs are sketchy or whatever, like, spread that information. You're not trashing anyone, but politely tell other people, hey, I got offered this, it's a little sketchy. And a lot of times, just like low rates in town, like, producers will realize that they're not getting quality crew, and they'll change their procedures if they can't get the crew. So, everyone's dying to get back to work. Well, most people are dying to get back to work, even me. But like, it's really important that you do set yourself some limits, and that if you're going to break certain rules, then you're making it harder for other people to enforce those rules. So that's
all great. Megan, what about you? I mean, your situation's a little bit different, but.
Yeah, it's a little different. With Warner Media, out of all of Warner Media, because I have to think about Los Angeles as well, they're testing. There's a lot of productions that are happening in LA, and I know it doesn't really pertain to the film festival here, but there's a lot of productions that are going back to work, and they are testing. We, however, are not. So we have less crew, though. We have restructured where our equipment is. When we are on set for the sports, there's only like 3 people on set. And they've combined jobs. So, maybe the audio person is also the stage manager in a way. So they've condensed a lot of things. So when you have 20 people, 25 people on a crew, they might be doing more things, but they've also moved all of the RoboCams out of the studio, and, and it's socially distanced in another area. They've shrunk their control rooms from, what could have been 12 people at one time. Now the max capacity is like 4. So we are not testing because we are socially distancing. We are required to wear a mask. And we have those protocols set in place on what are approved masks as well. However, we have discussed testing because everybody else is within the company, but we have not had that come to fruition yet.
Yeah. And Trish, and I know we got to wrap this up, but have you gotten the nasal swab test?
So the first test I did was a nasal swab, and it was very non-intrusive. And I used to get nasal swabs a lot to get sinus infections, so they do that, you know, often to check for sinus infections. So I'm used to it. Across the street, there is a free testing site, which is done by the city, and it's completely free. And I go every 2 weeks now, so I have a somewhat current test to show if I ever get a day plane job. But that person literally picked my brain, and I was like, I should have started my head against the back of the seat because I backed up so much. She just kept pushing back there. And so I guess there are different levels depending on how they're trained or what the test is, like on how deep they go. A lot of shows are doing that kind of a test on the first one or two, and then from then are doing cheek swabs and assuming that people want to stay employed and are following rules and what you're talking about, you know, getting rid of people that aren't. But yeah, those tests can definitely be painful and intrusive. For me, I just, you know, rubbed my nose, and a minute and a half later it was done, and I forgot all about it. And 3 days later I got my negative, you know, reply and whatever. But like, yeah, if I got that test twice a day, I literally would want to die. Like, it hurt a lot. And we're women, we have very high thresholds of pain. So yeah, so again, I was like, what are people talking about? They don't hurt at all. Like, I had it, it was nothing. And like, I've done 4 tests, and that was the only one that like has been atrocious. But yeah, you never know. So yeah, but it's definitely
I've heard this
accurate too. So
yeah. And that's, you know, that's the thing. I think, you know, what I'm seeing is a lot of reality, a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of reality shows, a lot of sports, you know, sports and weather, obviously news, you know, so broadcast stuff is still going. A lot of the shows, like Sarah, who was here with us before, you know, her show was one that was shut down and then came back and finished. So there's a lot of shows that are finishing up what they started that were shut down in the middle of production or in the middle of prep. But, you know, we're already in September. You know, if you're watching this, it is now mid to late September. We did this, you know, in the mid-September. But, you know, winter's coming. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of shows that jump into full production, let's say in November, you know, if like you're not starting up in September, October, we're probably not going to have a November, December, January, February. The film and TV world, I think, is going to kind of fall in the way that commercial world goes. Like, commercial world, for the most part, shuts down around Thanksgiving. We've got those use it or lose it money jobs that pop up that you're like, ooh, I get to spend $200,000. Yeah, you know, it's all those last minute jobs around the holidays that you're not expecting. But then, you know, we have to wait until fiscal budgets are approved and new ideas for commercials come up. So, you know, we may be down for 4 or 5 months. You know, this year I'm thinking that's going to happen with TV shows because they're probably not going to want to let all their crew go on a Christmas, New Year hiatus and then start back to work 3 days later, because now, you know, people are going to be visiting family just like they have, you know, at other holidays. It is the holidays. You know, families are going to get together. So I think the studios are smart enough to realize, like, we got to get this shit done, you know, by Thanksgiving, if not before that. So I'm anticipating probably a pretty slow November, December, January, which hopefully gives us time to get those more accurate rapid tests. You know, I don't think there's going to be a vaccine, no matter how much Trump and his people are, oh, we're going to have a vaccine. No, stop fooling us before an election. You know, but
and
I think
who would take it? The first one, like the first round. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I have friends. No, I'm there with you. I have friends who have volunteered to be part of these testing protocols. You know, some younger and some older, because, you know, they feel like, my dad, for instance, he wouldn't do it because if he gets it, he's got complications. But he's a Republican, lifelong Republican. He is wearing a mask. He knows if he gets it, he's dead. He was just exposed by a family member who ended up showing up positive 3 days later. This is day 14 of quarantine. He and stepmom are good. They got through it. her family is doing less good. You know, they've been getting sick. That's how it all started. But it's that simple, oh, we're going to have somebody over for dinner that we trust thing, which I think is going to be a problem down the road. But, you know, I think that's our true, the thing that is truly keeping us from getting back to work is the accuracy of tests, the quickness of tests, the less invasive test that is accurate and quick. And the idea of a vaccine. And I'm pretty impressed with all of the people I know who are jumping on that vaccine. I mean, the reason I mentioned my dad is because, you know, he's in his 70s and he's looking around saying, this is destroying our economy. You know, he's one of those people that thought, well, maybe you know, it's like, how much more do I have to live? What is the rest of my quality of life? Maybe I should take one for the team, you know, maybe, you know, so there's a lot of people who are seeing the destruction and understanding the long-term consequences of what COVID is going to mean for this country and the world economy. And they're thinking like, we need to make this happen. So yeah, I don't think I'd take the vaccine on the first one either. You know, I don't like the first Apple product. I like to wait till the second generation comes, and I'll probably do the same with that. But, you know, I think once those things happen and once we are able to come up with better ways to get us on set and be safe, that this industry is going to open fast and wide. I mean, TV shows, commercials, movies, all of this thing, you know, we're all out of entertainment. You know, we've streamed everything and watched every damn movie we can. Like, we need something else. I
did want to say that just because they're not testing doesn't mean I do the same thing. Once a month, I go get tested for free from the Department of Public Health. I make my husband do it as well, and I just do it once a month, and then that way I know I've got that clean bill of health, Trisha, just like you were saying, and can be covered. I mean, I could do it two weeks. Maybe once it starts picking up at Warner Media and I'm on longer and more entertainment shows come back in, I might get more frequent, but you don't have to, I guess you don't always have to rely on the production to do your testing. You can go do this as well. There are resources out there to get tested. If you don't have insurance like myself, because I haven't been working, your Department of Public Health can assist with that. Find a location, tests come back like in 3 days. If you're fortunate enough to get on a show that does testing for free, great. It doesn't matter who is doing the test. If you're concerned about it, go get it done. There's resources out there.
And I think
what
that's
I did
great.
want to add to, just because it's not their fault. You can do it too. Be responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think that's
because it's not set, like, you're responsible for your own test anyways. And sometimes that's on the clock and sometimes it isn't, but like that has not been negotiated fully yet. And so you might as well get your own test. And that way you're keeping people that you come in contact with safe.
You know, you're being safe.
Catching early and whatnot. And like I said, like my friend at the CDC is like 100% positive. I had it in February before it was even popular because, well, that's me and I get everything. But I get tested every 2 weeks. And it's like, especially I'm a day player. I don't like working full-time 3-month shows. That's kind of dead in the water now, most likely. But I do get the calls when somebody gets a fever or, you know, they can't come in or they get, you know, sick, whatever. So it's like, I need to make sure, because that was the first thing those producers asked me on the other job was, when was your most recent COVID test? And I said, I've never had one. And they were like, here's the way to get one tomorrow. So you can come in tomorrow and do it. If I had had one that day, I could have come in that day. So I think it's up to you. And then again, there's so many positive, you know, false positives and false negatives that, like, if you had one 3 days ago and then you get on a show and they test you again, now you have 2 negative tests, like the odds of both of those being bad are very, very, very small. So it's like, it's just better. Again, you should always treat yourself like you're contagious anyways, and other people are contagious, but there's something nice. Like every time I get a sore throat from like not drinking enough water or whatever, like I'm like, do I have COVID? And it's like, no, I just got a test 2 days ago. It said I'm clean. Like I don't have it yet. Like those things, it's just that mental, you know, craziness too.
And definitely keeping in tune with like how you're feeling. If you're feeling run down, ask yourself, what did I do? You know, am I run down because I just ran a marathon or it just worked out? I was just out in the heat gardening. Okay. We do have to do temperature checks every day before we go into work. So I do a temperature check. I'm a working mom and I also go to school part-time. So I had to send my kids back to school. I do a temperature check on them every morning before they go to school. So
that's great.
it's not always about what the company is doing for you. You got to be responsible for this. Take your temperature, wash your hands.
Yeah.
My girls walk in this house, the first thing I say to them, go wash your hands. Well, we hand sanitize in the car. I don't care. Go wash your hands.
My roommate, she works in healthcare and she literally touches nothing. She'll get in her car, go somewhere, never leave her car, get back. Like we did something where I left.
And wash your hands.
She washed her hands.
Absolutely.
And I kind of made fun of it, but I'm like, she's right. So now I do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone walks in, you got to wash your hands coming in this house.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But I think being proactive is super important. And I think anybody who wants to get back to work, the idea that you go and get a free test. So if somebody does ask you the question, you can say a week. And plus it's peace of mind.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that you're okay and having a baseline every 2 weeks or once a month, I think is really important. But unfortunately our time is up and I have another one of these today that I need to record in a few minutes. But thank you. Thank you, Sarah, who is no longer with us. Thank you, Trisha, for all of your insight, especially as a day player, because that is a whole different world. And Megan, you know, what Turner is doing is very interesting. And I love, you know, that's very similar to post-production and just being inside an office space. You know, and all the production offices are opening up and those protocols are really kind of the same thing. So I want to thank all of you guys for sharing your expertise and for joining me. And I wish I could give you a big old hug and say thank you.
Hugs. These are the best.
Virtual hugs. Thank you, ladies. Have a great rest of your day. And we will see each other soon. Bye.
Bye, guys.